everyone, I hope y'all are having a great day, and today I'll be reviewing Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. This is an adult contemporary novel that's gotten quite a lot of buzz over the past few years, but it's recently gotten a lot of attention due to the drop of the movie trailer. I've wanted to read this book for a while now. I hauled it in one of my book hauls. I can't remember which one, but I have had it on my shelf for quite some time now. And although I've always wanted to read it, I never felt the urge to immediately pick it up until I heard about the movie trailer. When the movie trailer came out, a lot of people on my Twitter feed were really upset. They said that it was filled with spoilers and that it revealed the entire story and not to watch it if you hadn't read the book, and I, as a reader who hates being spoiled, avoided the movie trailer and decided that I would pick up the book and read it ASAP. I didn't know much about the story before going into the book. I was expecting a nice romance, something light and fluffy and fun, and it was none of those things. You look at this cover and you're like, wow, it's so bright and cheerful. It's not! It's such a serious story! And so I wasn't expecting what it actually had in store at all. So what is Me Before You about? It's about a man named Will, who used to be this incredibly adventurous and successful man who lived life to the fullest. He liked to go on wonderful trips and crazy adventures, and he was a very cultured person. He was always up to experience new things. And then one day a motorcyclist crashes into him, and Will is left in a wheelchair as a quadriplegic. He needs someone to take care of him and feed him and make sure that an infection doesn't wildly consume his body. And then there's Louisa, who is our main character. She just lost her job. Her family is near broke all the time, and so they desperately need her to get a new job so that she can keep the family afloat. So when there's this opportunity to be a caretaker for a disabled man, she of course seizes the chance. It pays well, and she doesn't have a degree, so there aren't a lot of options for her, and thus begins our story. There's another part to this plot that's actually really essential to the story, but you don't find out what it is until a few chapters in, so I feel like to reveal it to you now would be a spoiler, and I think that's why a lot of people were upset about the trailer, because the trailer does give this aspect of the plot away. So as I briefly mentioned before, this book is really serious, like to the point where it was uncomfortable to read. There's just so much conflict in this book, so many different types of conflict. For example, there's of course the economic conflict with Louisa's family because they're poor. There's conflict within the family too. Louisa and her younger sister Katrina don't get along very well. There's romantic-ish conflict between Louisa and her boyfriend Patrick, and of course the biggest conflict is the one that Louisa faces in her job. Louisa is put in a situation where a lot is riding on her, so she has a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety. And because of that, when I was reading this book, I also felt that. I felt so anxious. Whenever I was reading it, I would feel the pressure on me. It honestly felt like there was a huge weight just pressing down on my chest anytime I was reading this book. And so even though the story is good, the reading experience was so unpleasant for me. But it's a great book. The events that unfold throughout the story are very thought-provoking. The events force you to reevaluate your own ethics and your own values, and it does this by challenging your initial judgment. And Jojo Moyes does this purposefully and unapologetically. The level of seriousness involved in this story just really caught me off guard because it wasn't how the book was marketed at all, I feel like. Not only is this book stimulating in its contents, Jojo Moyes also creates really authentic and real feeling characters like Louisa, our main character, and her sister Katrina. I always pay a lot of attention to sister bonds in books, and this one felt really real to me. They don't get along very well. They're constantly butting heads and getting into kind of petty fights. Jojo Moyes just conveyed that realism really expertly, I thought. I do think the writing could have been pithier and more concise and thus more effective. There were frequently descriptive passages that I thought bogged down the flow of the story. The dialogue could have been better. I do think that the dialogue was kind of weak. The thing is, like, Louisa is characterized as a really bright, cheery kind of character, but that's never really reflected in her dialogue. Will also comments on her intelligence in a positive way in a lot of different scenes, but I didn't see much reflection of that either. But she does have spirit, and she does have the ability to distract Will from all the problems that he has. The story was slow building for me. I thought it was a little too slow for my personal taste, but I feel like it probably won't be that big of an issue for other readers. I know I've talked about the seriousness of the issues covered in this book pretty often in this review, and so I feel like this might be implied, but I'll just give you a warning anyway. This book is really emotional. It has a lot of ups and a lot of downs, and it takes a lot out of you. But that's all I'll say about this book in the non-spoiler section. So if you haven't read Me Before You and you don't want to be spoiled, I would advise leaving like Now, I hope you're gone, 'cause we're moving on. That rhymed. Okay, spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Alright. I don't really know how I feel about the ending to this book. I think 70% of me knew how it was going to end. I knew that Will was actually going to go through with it. And a lot of that was because I knew that there was a sequel called After You, and the title After You kind of gives the events away. But there was the other 30% of me that just held out hope. I kept on hoping that there would be a happy ending. I told myself, so many people love and rave about this book. The ending must be happy. Everyone loves happily ever afters. And then I was like, Sophia, that doesn't make any sense. A lot of people love The Fault in Our Stars, and that's a sad book. People like sad books too. Before reading this book, I was against physician-assisted suicide. After reading this book, I'm still against physician-assisted suicide, but I do appreciate Jojo Moyes' message. What I love about this book and the author's style with which she handled these topics is that Jojo Moyes really cracks open these issues and lays out all the evidence for the reader to evaluate on his or her own. I thought Jojo Moyes did a great job of defending Will's argument without coming across as too preachy. She definitely illuminated a lot of different aspects of the argument that I hadn't seen before or I hadn't considered before, and in that way this book was enlightening. I don't really want to launch into a huge debate over this topic because I know it's a really hot topic of contention, but personally I don't really support it. I do understand the arguments that Jojo Moyes presents in this book. I know what she's saying and I appreciate that she's opening up this discussion, but I also know that deep down in my heart, my perspective, I guess, on life and death and who gets to decide what is very firm. That's enough about that. I'll just say that Jojo Moyes, I thought, was very, very good at approaching this topic so gracefully and tactfully. She also seemed to have done a lot of research about quadriplegics. I feel like I felt the effort of her research shine through her writing. I think that added a level of authenticity to the story, and it told me that Jojo Moyes was very serious and respectful toward this topic. I can't really decide whether I think this ending is happy or not. I mean, obviously it's not that happy because I literally spent the last few pages with tears all over my face. If you're sobbing sad tears at the end of a story, that's probably indicative of how sad the ending is. But it wasn't entirely sad because it was what Will wanted, and it was hopeful in the sense that it was giving Louisa like a new direction and a new push towards a better direction in her life. Will gives Louisa the means to take control of her life and do incredible things, and that's a great sentiment, but I can't help but feel like that in real life it would be so difficult to do that. Like I'm unsure about whether the ending is happy or sad, I'm also very unsure about Louisa's transformation itself. I wish Louisa had come to this conclusion that she needed to actually do something with her life on her own terms, using her own brain power, especially because she's supposed to be a really intelligent girl. Will is the one who forces her to do things outside of her comfort zone, and he constantly tells her that she needs to be exploring beyond her small town. Will is always criticizing Louisa for being complacent, and the thing is, his criticism is really, really valid. Everything he says is true, but I can't help but wish that Louisa's realization that she needed to actually get things done came from her own personal epiphany and not from the orders given by a man. I mean, I think it's okay for Will to be the spark that sets things into motion, but he can't be the spark and the entire flame too, because then Louisa has no agency of her own. I feel like this is an issue that's brought up in a lot of different books. I know there are some books where the main character is really overweight and she doesn't have the best self-esteem and she wonders whether boys are going to like her, and then a boy comes along and falls in love with her and she realizes that she has her own worth. And in cases like that, the ultimate message, the fact that you found value in yourself, you found yourself beautiful, you realize that you're worth so much more than you gave yourself credit for, that's a gorgeous message and it's important. But the means by which the main character gets to that conclusion is also important, I think, and I feel like if it's constantly men who are giving women these conclusions, I feel like that's like stripping agency away from females. Yeah, I don't know, I feel like that's a discussion for a different video. Sorry for that tangent. Anyway, going back to the ending, I kind of don't want to see the movie just because I don't want to have to relive that pain of having Will die. But I mean, I'll probably still watch it. Immediately after I finished reading the book, I went to YouTube and I watched the movie trailer and I cried again. I thought the movie trailer was great and I think the casting is just so perfect. Perfect casting. Do I wish the ending had been different? I don't really know. I don't think my feelings have been properly sorted out yet. I really was holding out hope for a happy ending, but I feel like the ending that we did receive was a lot more in character. It really fit Will's disposition very well. I mean, I did want a happy ending. I thought it was a good sign when they took a vacation to Africa. I thought it was a good sign when she broke up with Patrick finally and moved into Will's house. I thought maybe she could have actually changed his mind. But I also feel like it wouldn't have made a lot of sense if she had been able to do that. The ending made me sad, but it was also really realistic. I'll end with something not as sad and actually kind of irrelevant, and that is this. This book honestly felt like Twilight fanfiction to me. And hold on, I don't mean that as an insult at all, because I have read so much Twilight fanfiction in my years. Countless stories. I cannot tell you how many Twilight fanfictions I have read. I have read so many. I'm crazy. I know, but I'm not even that embarrassed. You know why? Because there is some really great fanfiction out there. But there's a really specific subgenre of Twilight fanfiction that I read, and that is alternate universe, all human Twilight fanfiction, where basically it is the author's own story and the only thing that's similar to Twilight are the characters' names and the characteristics. But other than that, all human Twilight fanfiction is essentially just the author's own story. And that's why I think it's so easy for Twilight fanfiction authors to publish their Twilight fanfiction. But anyway, like I was saying, I've read a lot of Twilight fanfiction, and believe me, there are a lot of really great Twilight fanfictions out there. And this book read like one of those. Louisa felt like somebody's take on Bella to me, and Will, of course, felt like Edward to me. And I cannot give you any reasons why. I don't have any evidence to support my claim that this felt like Twilight fanfiction to me. I don't know why. I cannot explain myself to you. I don't know if it was the characters or if it was just the way the writing was. It kind of felt like it was written like it wasn't meant to be published. It just felt like she was writing it for fun. I don't know, I probably sound crazy, but the Twilight fanfiction vibe that I felt was just so strong, I couldn't not mention it. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, please just leave me a comment and let me know that I'm not insane. Sorry for that weird tangent. Those are all my thoughts on Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. It was definitely not what I was expecting. It really surprised me. Please let me know what you thought about Me Before You. I would really love to know. Thanks so much for watching. I hope y'all have a fantastic day and happy reading. Goodbye!